I struggle with not having the correct reaction to bad news. A perfect example is a couple months ago, I had just started my job as a manager for a new company. I was 2 weeks in at this point, and one of the employees on my team came to me in the morning meeting, and on his way out, I asked him how his weekend was, and he said, I got some bad news from my doctor. And I was just like, oh no. And that was pretty much it. I could tell he wanted me to ask what the news was. I assumed it was cancer, but I just did not want to have that conversation because I didn't really know this guy, and I was afraid that if he told me he had cancer, that I wouldn't have a strong enough reaction and he would be offended. Or I would have tried to feign a sad reaction and it just would have been an even more awkward interaction. Well, later that day, he comes in and the director of operations is there, and she's known this guy for a long time. He says, I got some bad news from the doctor. And she took the invitation. She goes, what is it? And he gets choked up and he said, cancer. She got up and she hugged him and he was crying a little bit. And I didn't even know what to say. In that moment, I was glad that earlier in the day I didn't ask what it was because there's absolutely no way that I was going to react like she did. And I think that's kind of the reaction that he wanted. But I just don't have that in me. And it's not like a get over it type attitude. It's not that at all. I just can't do the thing that most people do where they generate other people's sadness and like feel for them in that way. This sounds way more psychotic as I'm trying to explain it than it actually feels, but just bear with me. My fear is that when my dad passes away, I won't cry. My dad and I have a great relationship. We always have. But I just don't get emotional when it comes to people passing away, at least so far in my experience. And so far it's been, grandparents and great grandparents, elderly people in my family that have passed away. Whenever I've had my grandparents pass away, I never shed a tear. My sister used to get really upset with me, like when my grandpa died, and I wasn't really all that sad. I didn't really have much of a relationship with him, and neither did she, but when he died, she was just devastated. But I wasn't. I thought about it at the time, and my explanation was that I had known for a long time that he would pass away because he was fighting cancer for a long time. And it was a long time coming, so his death was not sudden. So I figured that my grief was just drawn out over a long period of time. But thinking back on it, the truth is that I just really wasn't that sad. There was never a point, even when I found out the news that he had cancer, I was never like torn up about it. It's the same as any other person who passed away in my family. I just don't get affected by it. And I find myself in a room full of sad people when somebody's passing away. And I have to act sad. Like I feel guilty that I'm not as emotional as everybody else. It's a very odd place to be in. So when I was in a different state for a couple of deaths, I was relieved to not have to be in that position. By the time I got to the funeral, people were pretty much back to normal, and it was easier to deal with. So when I think about my dad dying, I don't know how I would react. By comparison, if my wife dies or one of my kids died, I feel like that would almost destroy my life. I literally can't imagine moving on with life if my daughter died. I would never recover from that grief. A couple days ago, I went to go see Mortal Kombat 2. Great movie, by the way. And I was tearing up in the first scene when the little girl, Katana, watched her dad fight Shao Kahn and he gets killed. If I was watching that movie alone, I would have cried. Because the girl reminded me of my daughter. The dad kind of reminded me of myself, like the way he was talking to his daughter. It was like I was watching what it would be like if my daughter had to watch me fight Shao Kahn. And I was tearing up. So I do have those strong emotions when it comes to, like, my family, my wife, my kids. Anyways, I remember a while back I was talking to my friend about something, and he mentioned like it was a fact that the love you have for your parents surpasses the love that you would have for a girl. But I disagree with that. The love that I've felt for girls that I've been in love with, including my wife, far surpasses the love that I feel for my parents. It feels weird to me that your wife and kids would not be the people that you love most. My level of emotion that I feel towards my wife and kids is way greater than the emotion that I feel towards my parents. My wife's grandmother passed away last night. Again, it was not unexpected. She was in hospice care for almost a month. She was 95. I feel bad because when she told me, I didn't really react much. I just said, "Oh no, I'm sorry." And that was that. To be fair, she told me about it like flippantly this morning. We were in our daughter's room telling her that she had to get out of bed and get ready. And my wife was looking at our daughter and said, "Come on, you got to go to daycare." Then without even turning towards me, she just said, "Grandma Joe passed away last night." So I feel like my reaction matched up to the way that the news was presented. She didn't seem sad at all. She's kind of like me in a way where she's pretty subdued with her emotions, I would say. But later that day, she texted me and she said she had to call off work early. And I asked her why. She said because she was crying too much. I think she likes to deal with this stuff more on her own. She doesn't want me to see her cry and stuff like that. So I think that's why she dropped the bomb so flippantly in the middle of us doing something, because she didn't want to have like a heart to heart about it. There's a certain level of like empathy or sympathy that people have that I just can't muster sometimes. This is something that I don't think about very often, but every once in a while something bad happens and I just wish that I could provide people with more emotional support. But I just kind of wish we would change the topic. I don't know. I've just been thinking about this lately. If you like the video, please subscribe and I'll see you next time.